All right. Well, thank you all for staying with us for the day. I appreciate that very much. I'd like to introduce you. It's my honor and my privilege to introduce you to Emma Sinclair. She's originally from Samoa. Emma's undergraduate and first year of her graduate study interests were firmly rooted in the hands-on terrestrial realm. However, she opted for a broader experience and secured a professional internship working in government for the betterment of multiple biomeans. Please welcome Emma.
Okay, thank you, Lisa, for the introduction, and thank you to everyone else for tuning in. Hello and talafalava. I'm Emma Sinclair, and based off of my TCBES and internship journey, today I will be giving my talk on environmental governance and monitoring in the Pacific. So the order of my presentation will follow the following outline. Firstly, I will briefly talk about what got me into the environmental sciences. Then I'll go into why I chose to pursue the TCBS program and why I found the internship track a more fitting path for me. I will then go into my internship at the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program, or SPREP for short, some of the tasks that I was responsible for, my deliverables, and most importantly, what I've learned from this internship and TCBS as a whole. I'm going to be ending my talk with what I plan to do moving forward after my graduation. So with that said, let's begin. Choosing my career path. So a little bit of a story here. In high school, I had very different ambitions career-wise. At the top of my list, I actually wanted to go into nuclear engineering because at the time, I thought I was pretty good at physics. So that interest just sort of stuck with me. However, I am from Samoa, a small country in the South Pacific. So there was still that uncertainty because a nuclear engineer is not exactly a job that you would find yourself doing, especially if you plan working on a small island in the Pacific. So considering that, I decided on a field that was relevant to the location of the future workplace that I wanted to work in. And nuclear engineering did not exactly pan out for me, but one area that I believe was lacking and that needed more focus, especially in the Pacific, was environmental science. I noticed that the majority of primary research and studies done on Pacific environments were mostly conducted by foreigners. And not that it's a bad thing, but just noticing that there is a clear absence of Pacific researchers made me more interested in this field. More importantly, with the many environmental issues currently happening in the Pacific region, for example, the impacts of climate change, gold and sand mining, overfishing, and many others just happening in our backyard, that eventually drove me to pursue the career in the environmental field. So with this path in mind, I chose to study for my Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Science here at Hilo, where I graduated in the spring of 2018. So why TCBES? After I completed my bachelor's, I wanted to further pursue my education, and TCBES was a program that I had found out about during my last semester of undergraduate studies. After doing a bit of research of master's programs in other colleges, I found this TCBES program a more favorable choice because one, I was already familiar with my environment, and I also knew some of the professors that taught in the program, so I thought that was a benefit for me. Another thing that interested me more in this program was the internship track. This track is quite unique, and I found it very fitting for me because it offered a chance for me to not only professionally, but also actively to contribute to an environmental agency that I want to gain experience from. I thought this was also a plus because it would later help build my skills necessary to work in a future professional environment setting, among other things. So moving on, when I joined TCBES in the fall of 2018, I admit the first semester was very intense, but it did help prepare me for some of the activities and responsibilities that were expected of me for my internship. The early part of the program taught some important research skills, such as writing proposals, grant writing, data gathering, and professional peer reviewing. Also conducting literature reviews, so how to synthesize information and looking for relevant sources that were applicable to whatever it was that you were researching. The early part of the program also taught good presentation and communication skills, such as how to prepare your slides and just knowing your audience and the tone to take when presenting. I thought that helped me a long way. Another important takeaway was time management. So just knowing how to manage your time wisely to make sure that the tasks and assignments are done in a timely manner, because things can get pretty busy with your professional and personal lives. So this was an important skill to learn. So those were some of the important gains from TCBS that I thought would help me engage my internship more effectively. When I was deciding on where to have my internship, I wanted to find an agency or an organization whose work has direct influence in the Pacific region. This was important for me because not only is the Pacific home for me, but it is actually home to some of the world's most impressive biological and cultural diversity as well. However, like I mentioned before, there are many environmental challenges involved, and many Pacific islands are actually economically and technically under-resourced to deal with them. We have disastrous weather events such as cyclones, we have mining, logging, ocean acidification, overfishing and pollution that is increasingly degrading our ecosystems. So with all of these multitude of challenges, personally, I believe that there was an urgent need to understand and evaluate the role of environmental governance and law in responding to these pressures and these challenges in the Pacific, which actually brings us to my second expectation. I wanted to work in an organization based on their role in environmental governance. So in simple terms, environmental governance refers to an interactive decision-making process in environmental matters. So it includes institutions and organizations, as well as binding agreements, policy instruments, and procedures that regulates environment protection at different levels, global, regional, and local levels. Environmental governance differs from environmental management because management actually involves operational decisions to achieve specific processes or specific conservation outcomes, whereas governance actually refers to the broader processes and the institutions through which societies make decisions about that affect the environment. So those were my two main expectations for choosing an internship site. From my internship, my personal development targets was to further improve my communication and presentation skills, achieve professional exposure from an environmental organization, gain knowledge on regional environmental issues and priorities, and then of course, gain knowledge and hands-on experience of how these issues are dealt with at policy level. Following my goals and expectations, I found an internship position with the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program, which I will be referring to as SPREP for the remainder of this presentation. My internship was held from May to September of 2019. So a little bit of a background on SPREP. SPREP is an intergovernmental regional organization that was founded in 1993 and was established by the governments and the administrations of the Pacific. So they were actually tasked with the protection and the management of the environment and natural resources of the Pacific. Their main office is located in Apia, Samoa. So the orange location pin on the map shows SPREP's location in the region. So as mentioned, SPREP is an intergovernmental organization. So they provide advice and technical assistance to their member countries. Their member countries consist of 21 Pacific Island countries and territories, and as well as 5 other member countries with direct interest in the region. So these are the developed countries, which include the likes of New Zealand, Australia, the US, France, and the UK. Moving on, SPREP's mandate is to promote cooperation in the Pacific region and provide assistance to their member countries to protect and improve its environment and to ensure sustainable development for present and future generations. SPREP employs over 150 employees from various parts of the world, so it is a very diverse and multicultural workplace. SPREP also has 4 main programs or divisions that deal with their 4 main priorities, which include climate change resilience, ecosystem and biodiversity, effective waste management and pollution control, and last but not least, environmental monitoring and governance. Of the 4 main programs, I worked under the Environmental Monitoring and Governance Program, or EMG for short. For SPREP member countries, EMG assists with environmental governance, policy development, environmental planning, monitoring, and reporting. So in summary, I have listed EMG's services and support, which include 1, strengthening national sustainable development planning and implementation systems through the use of environmental impact assessments, or EIAs, and strategic environmental assessments, or SEAs, which I will talk more about later on in spatial planning. Secondly, they also provide technical assistance for the development of environmental policy and legislation. They also help strengthen environmental data collection, environmental monitoring, and analysis and reporting on results both nationally and regionally. 4, they also help strengthen access to funding mechanisms, and they use these funds effectively and efficiently to deliver required interventions. And lastly, EMG helps strengthen synergies between science, policy, and traditional and local knowledge to guide decision-making. So these are some of the services and support provided by the EMG program to their SPREP member countries. So this is the entire EMG division. We had 3 different units that focus on different areas. The first team is environmental monitoring and reporting. So this team runs the INFORM project, which helps Pacific Island countries develop and manage their own data portals to help store their own environmental data and studies. They also help provide Pacific Islands with reporting tools to help support the monitoring, evaluation, and analysis of their environmental information. The second team is the Environmental Planning and Management Unit. I was assigned to this team as an environmental assessment and planning technical assistant, as highlighted in green. Our team was fairly small, as you can see. There were only 3 of us, so I was very involved with many of the team's responsibilities and activities, which I will talk more about later on. The third team is the Environmental Governance team, and they basically help with the reviewing and developing environmental policies and legislation. So my team consisted of my mentors, who were the environmental planning advisor, Mr. Jope Davidsanivalu. He was the former director of environment at the Department of Environment and Resource Management in Fiji. My other mentor was Dr. Gregory Barber from Australia. He too is an accomplished environmental scientist and consultant with years of experience. So I was very fortunate to work and learn from a team of experienced professionals. So moving on, I'm going to talk about some of my team's responsibilities that I was able to contribute to. So one of the focus areas of our team deals with giving training and support to Pacific member countries regarding EIAs, environmental impact assessments, and strategic environmental assessments. An EIA is quite similar to what we refer to as an environmental assessment here in the US. It is actually a process that helps evaluate the likely impacts of a proposed project on the environment and vice versa. And these proposed projects, they can range from a solar energy farm to a commercial airport, a wharf, a new road, a tourist resort, etc. A number of major developments in the Pacific are rapidly growing, so it is important to be able to perform an effective IA that will be able to fully assess the social, economic, and environmental impacts of a project. An EIA is also important because it can help decision makers make a decision on whether or not that project should be built. So at the time of my internship, one of the EIA-related activities that I was able to contribute to was using my research skills and background to provide review and comments to a proposed energy feasibility project that was proposed in Yap, Micronesia. Also, we were requested to provide EHA training for both the islands of Samoa and Tokelau. So I was heavily involved with the planning content as well as the logistics for these trainings. The pictures below show some of the SPREP trainings conducted in Nauru, Tokelau, and the Federated States of Micronesia. It is important to note that the EIA trainings provided are not only limited to professionals who work in the environmental field, but even teachers and village chiefs are also very involved in these trainings. My other tasks involved upkeeping SPREP's Pacific Network for Environmental Assessment, or the PNEA website. The PNEA site supports SPREP's capacity building program for EIA and SEA. So it also supports government officials from Pacific Island countries and territories who work with environmental assessments. The site also provides regional updates and news relevant to environmental assessments. So if you'd like to learn more about this, you can actually check out the website at the link shown at pnea.sprep.org. I also created the first newsletter for the site, and this is sent to all registered members of the PNEA. This newsletter is now used as a template for other future PNEA newsletter issues. Since delivering effective EIA and SEA training is a major goal of my team, I was assigned to create a survey to identify the EIA and SEA training gaps and needs of Pacific Island members. The survey questions were carefully crafted, and they were reviewed by the entire team to ensure that there was effective responses and feedback. The survey was sent out to all the environmental practitioners in the Pacific, and as a benefit to SPREP, the results from the survey can actually help SPREP improve and develop and deliver targeted EIA and SEA capacity building and training that meets Pacific Island specific needs. This survey was sent out towards the end of my internship, so sadly, I was not able to compile the entire survey results, but it was kept on to receive more feedback. Continuing on, I was also tasked to develop some communication materials that could assist SPREP's capacity building programs. I helped create a brochure based on SPREP's 2018 EIA guidelines shown. So this project took at least a month to complete. Since all of the EIA decision-making bodies and processes in the Pacific are different in different countries, it was challenging to compile a brochure that could be useful for every single Pacific country. So thankfully it worked out in the end, and the brochure is approved to be used in future EIA trainings as well as for general information purposes. I won't go into too much details here, but some of my other important assignments to mention include providing technical guidance to the Nauru Director of Environment, Mr. Brian Starr, regarding the environmental risks of the sand mining problem in Nauru. My feedback to him included some suggestions for governance controls and high-level mitigation and assessment. I also assisted with completing SPREP's work plan for their involvement in their new PLP-ESS partnership with the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and the University of the South Pacific. So just a brief background, this is quite a mouthful, but PLP-ESS stands for the Pacific Learning Partnership for Environmental and Social Sustainability. So this partnership was established in 2019, and it is a collaboration that will actually deliver training, facilitate exchange of experiences and knowledge, mentor trainees, develop curricular, and respond to the needs of Pacific Island countries to support capacity building. Furthermore, I also helped provide review on the Cook Islands draft governance policy. In terms of my performance evaluation, I've gotten some good feedback for my performance from my team. For all my deliverables, such as the communication materials for the EIA training and the surveys, newsletter publications, all these were sent to the entire EMG team for review and comments before they were approved. They had to meet certain expectations of a SPREP publication. So I've gotten approval for all of these materials to be used in future training programs and for other areas of EMG's work. So I'm pretty happy about what I've contributed. During my internship, of course, there were some challenges, and some of those challenges include communication. Like I mentioned earlier, SPREP is an organization that provides support and gives advice to their member countries. So there is a certain way that we should communicate to the countries. We should not sound bossy or sound like we're ordering them around. So that kind of tone we had to apply not only verbally, but also through writing correspondence and so. Another challenge was not keeping within the set deadline. During the first week of the internship, I had to create a work plan and share that with my mentors. I admit that I did not hit any of the timelines set in the work plan because more work and meetings started piling up and I had no account for that. I did not know what to expect, so my work plan did not go exactly to plan. Moving on for office work. I'm actually used to doing a lot of hands-on field work, but the work that I was doing at SPREP was technically desk work. So it took me a while to get used to sitting behind the desk and behind the screen for most of the time, and that proved to be a little bit of a challenge. Trying to understand environmental policy terms was another challenge for me. So getting into the technical terms and legislation processes was difficult for me because every country had different systems. So there was a lot of reading involved and a lot of catching up to do. Okay, so for required skills, I believe that to excel in this field of environmental governance, I recognize the following skills as being necessary. Firstly, being a good critical thinker, having good communication skills, both verbal and written, research, so the ability to analyze the nature and sources of problems and their solutions. Good public speaking, of course, the ability to articulate your own views efficiently and positively. Computer skills, so not only word processing, but also spreadsheets and computer presentations, for example, PowerPoint and Excel. And then conflict resolution, negotiation, and community building. I think that's the most important. So having the ability to work positively with each other. And most importantly, multicultural interchange, the ability to work positively with diverse cultures and ethnic groups. These are some of the skills that I feel are necessary for you in the environmental governance or at SPREP in general. So before this internship, my knowledge of environmental assessments was minimal. And when it came to EIA and related procedures in the Pacific, I knew nothing at all. But now that my 17-week internship is over, I feel like I have learned a lot. First of all, I've become more familiar with the organization of environmental governance on a regional level. and the role of different institutions at both the national level and the regional level. For example, the local environmental agencies, such as the Nauru Department of Environment, and regional organizations such as SPREP. I've also learned to be flexible with the work plan because not everything will go exactly to plan, and unexpected event is bound to happen. So it's very good to be flexible. Surprisingly enough, I've also learned about other environmental issues happening in the Pacific region that I had absolutely no idea of. So I was actually surprised with the sand mining problem in Nauru, the gold mining problem in the Solomon Islands, and now the seabed mining problem that is being proposed to happen in the Pacific. I also got acquainted with the functions and responsibilities of SPREP, and of course became highly involved in the daily life of the EMG division. Teamwork is highly valued at SPREP, and overall, I've had a wonderful experience, and I actually feel extremely fortunate for the opportunity. And the picture on the slide there shows our EMG team, myself included. This was taken during the 2018 Regional Inform meeting that the EMG team hosted to discuss the environmental monitoring and reporting in the region. So we had representatives from the different member countries attend. So moving forward, I will be graduating soon, and for my future plans, I do plan on returning back to Samoa to work. This TCBES internship track has really helped me recognize environmental assessment and policies as an interest for me. So I do plan on pursuing a job in that field, God willingly. So moving to end things off, finally, I'd like to acknowledge each and every one of these individuals who I worked with as part of TCBES and SPREP. My advisor, Lisa, my SPREP mentors, Greg and Jope, for being patient with me and for their guidance, and also Easter for convincing me to join her team at SPREP. To the TCBES community, as well as my EMG family, thank you very much. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Oh, great job, Emma. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. So I am wondering about the future that you want to have in Samoa. Are you going to be applying for governance jobs, or are you looking for to go back to the hands-on work that you were so familiar with? Like what direction are you moving into?
I feel like from this internship at SPREP, I feel like I'm leaning more towards the desk work. So environmental policies and governance, I feel like that's where I need to be.
And I'm also wondering, as you learned about some of the more challenging extractive practices that might be coming on with the gold mining and the sand mining, how are you feeling about advocacy work?
I feel like advocacy work, I think that's important, especially I think it plays a big role into trying to prevent these challenges from happening, because the gold mining problem in the Solomon Islands and the seabed problem that's currently happening, I feel like nobody is paying attention, and nobody knows about these things. Even myself, I had no idea that these were happening before I joined SPREP. So I believe that advocacy work is just as important to get the message out there and just to raise awareness.
All right, so we have two additional questions for you. One is from Dr. Ostertag. She's wondering, what did you learn in Hawaii that helped your work in Samoa and throughout the Pacific?
I feel like Hawaii and the Pacific, they both share very similar problems, environmental problems that is, due to similar environments, I guess you can say. And I feel like Hawaii, preparing me through my undergraduate studies, I feel like by recognizing those problems and looking for solutions to that, that actually helped me apply that to my work in the Pacific as well. Especially my EIA class this year in Hawaii, that actually gave me a little bit of a background to understand environmental assessments. So I was happy that I had that little bit of knowledge to actually work and apply that to SPREP's EMG work as well.
And then this next question is from Michael Yee. He's the director, the planning director for Hawaii County. And he states that they are trying to bring in more interns. And his question is, what do you think the agency learned from your participation in the internship program?
What they have learned. I feel like, sorry, Lisa, can you repeat that question again?
So the question is, what do you think the agency learned from your participation in the internship program?
Okay, so for SPREP, like I mentioned before, the EMG team is particularly, it's a small team, especially the team that deals with environmental assessments. So just having an intern there that is willing to do the work and share the workload, I feel like that benefits the agency a lot too. So I feel like that could help out. Just hiring more interns, I guess, share the workload.
And so were you able to bring knowledge to help them further their mission? Would you say it was a two-way street, or do you?
I feel like it was a two-way street. So I was able to help them with the surveys. So crafting questions that would be able to help them improve their programs, their EIA capacity building programs. And in return, I got to understand what the processes of EIAs in the Pacific and the things that went into trying to plan the trainings. I feel like it was a two-way stream before for both of us.
All right. Well, he wrote back mahalo to you. So thank you for your answer, for that answer. It looks like there's no further questions. Let me just double check the live stream. So I'd like to say thank you very much, Emma, again, for your presentation. And I would like to invite all the people who presented today to turn their video cameras on, and we'll do a, hopefully I'll be able to do this. You can all say hello to each other, and we'll take a group photo. So, you guys ready for this?
Lisa, I'll just be a second.
Okay, okay, great. Emma, we'll need you to stop your share so I can do the larger gallery view.
While we're waiting, I'll just add that as people listening, if you are working in an agency and you have ideas that you would like to see future interns work on, future project ideas, please don't hesitate to contact us. We'd be more than happy to talk to you and build up ideas of future projects for incoming students.
All right, so we just have to hang out in a minute for Maya. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the live stream while we take this picture. Thank you all again. Thank you everybody for coming. It was fantastic, and I'm really so proud of all of you. You just really rocked my world today. Thank you.